Ep002.
Broadcasting live from Toronto, Canada. This is the Youth Community Culture Podcast with your host, Olu Q.
Blessed love, family. Welcome back to the Youth Community Culture Podcast. It's your host, Olu Q, and I'm so excited that you're here with us today. We have a very special episode planned for you. As I said earlier, the main concern of this podcast is to help you help youth. One of the major issues that we're dealing with as a city right now is our young men, black, racialized young men from our communities who are losing their life to gun violence. This is not a new phenomenon, but we're seeing it play out in our streets, in our communities. So this is where we're going to start with this podcast. This is our foundation. We're going to get a sense of what the issues are, and we're going to do so by getting the narrative from a young man who's grown up in our city. His name is Raymond Dei, and he's here with us today to share his story. So I'm excited to have the interview with Raymond to share that with you. Extremely powerful. And the goal is, as we're listening, just pull out the pieces that really resonate with you, because I think his story is so incredibly powerful. All right, so I'm going to let you hear it for yourself. We'll touch base in a second. Let's get into this interview. Let's go. So listen, Ray, what's happening, man? Tell us how you're doing today. What's going on?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. Had the night shift, so I'm a little restless, but nonetheless, I'm more than happy and excited to be here with you today. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the future. Things are going really well for me, and I'm happy. 2017 has been a great start of the year for me, and I'm not looking back now, so I'm just looking forward.
That's fair. That's fair, man. I like that. So tell me some of the plans that you have. What are you working on these days? Some of your projects that you're kind of looking at, or even just stuff in general that you're working on right now?
Well, some of my plans, I haven't started any new plans as of yet, but some of my plans include me expecting a baby next month, and I'm well excited for that.
All right.
Yes.
Yo, congratulations, man. That's a real blessing.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
man.
you.
Number one is your first one?
My first one. Yes,
oh,
my very first one.
Oh, boy. Well, you know what? We got to talk offline. I got some advice for you, brother. I tell you this.
Thank you.
Congrats, man. So we don't want to have you here because the first time I met you, I really enjoyed just listening to you talk, man. And you have a real presence about you. And I wanted to know, just kind of go back and take it back to where you grew up, some of your, memories as a young man, and, some of the experiences that kind of helped form who you are today. So take us back to little Ray, back in the day, man.
Well, little Ray, let me just start off by saying I've been in this country 22, 23 years now.
Okay.
Little Ray started off in 1995, I'm age of 6 years old. And first place that I've ever been at was Deer and Church Away, and I grew up at Deer and Church Away. If most people that are listening, I'm sure they would know where it's at. Back then, the old food basics was there, and below the building was a little plaza with a convenience store and a little burger joint. I lived in what is called the White Bricks, right? So, man, I've seen a lot, and I've also endured a lot in that neighborhood. I remember my very first time in the country, man. I'm from Ghana, west side of Africa, so things are a little different, coming from Ghana at a very young age, and seeing the environment here, right? I remember I was bullied a lot. The very first time I had ever taken a punch to the face, I was in grade 1. You know what I mean?
Jeez.
It was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those where it's winter time and I'm coming home with snot down my face, and it's I'm bothered because it's I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? So I get home and I tell my father, and growing up, it's I grew up with tough love.
Okay.
But you see, growing up, I never knew exactly what tough love was until until now, right? Until as I got older. And part of that tough love was my father telling me, like, you know, you gotta be a big boy, you gotta stand up on your feet, you know, don't let these people do these things to you, right? So it wasn't more so like, you know, he resolved the issue for me because I knew I'd be going back to school, and who knows, the same individual that had socked me in the face maybe coming back again another time. But I knew in my mind, like, from what my father told me, when him telling me to stand my ground was like, throw up the gloves. So that's exactly what I did. And that was like the very first altercation I'd ever gotten into in Canada. I was in grade 1.
Wow.
I do like,
wow.
I do a fast one. It was like a quick punch, and I ran home, you know, the dude was chasing me. But as I got older, I was being embraced in the community, my brother and myself. We were being embraced in the community by all the other young children around.
Yes.
And all the other older heads, those that are considered OGs, original gangsters. So it's like, you know, growing up in Chippewa, you would hear a lot of sirens, you hear gunshots, and it's like nonstop, right? And as a kid, you think, you know, you're safe, you have no worries, right? Never get caught up in the line of fire.
Yes.
Right? But I've heard the saying, you are a product of your environment. You know what I mean? If you don't know any better, right, the people that you see every day in your community, you may end up sometimes being like them, right? Unless you have somebody that's going to sit you down and let you know you're right from you're wrong. I mean, you're a young guy, you do know you're right and from wrong, right? But it's like, if there's somebody that you see and you look up to, and you want to be like that person, you aspire to be like that person, all that they say to you sounds lovely and sweet in your ears, right? So it's like,
absolutely.
Growing up, I'm being taught, like, you know, how to hustle, how to grind, how to remain loyal, right? And all these things were being instilled in me as a young child growing up. I remember there was an incident that had happened. One of the young kids came outside. He was wearing like a full-out red shirt. Full-out red shirt. You know, I'm thinking, okay, nothing, you know, it's just a shirt.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, this guy's getting sent upstairs by the older heads, like, yo, go upstairs and go change your shirt. You don't wear that color around here.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Exactly. So at a very young age, I'm understand, okay, I'm being taught, like, okay, this neighborhood doesn't wear a certain color. All right? And next thing you know, it's like I'm a part of that. I'm a part of my environment. Right?
So that was my next... No,
Yeah,
sorry. So that was the question I really wanted to get into. Because I wanted to know about that influence in terms of friendship and your bond. And you touched on it, but can you tell us more about the importance of your friendship and your core group when you're growing up in an environment like that you just described?
It's crucial. To be honest with you, it's crucial. When you're growing up as kids, it's like, your friends will never stab you in the back, right? So it's like remaining loyal to the people in your community. They'll always have your back no matter what, as opposed to somebody that you don't know from a completely different community. Yeah. You know what I mean? Let's just say, like, we're a group of friends and we're going to hang out, or if you know what, let's go play some ball at this person's community. And, you know, if we don't stick together as a unit, if we don't stick together as a community, moving from one community to another, we'll get bullied.
Yeah.
So, like, it's important, right? I was affiliated with Crips. So it's like the whole Crip culture, like, I was learning the culture. I was learning how to do dance. I was learning how to dress, how to talk and walk like these guys. And it's like, I'm an affiliate. I would never say that, you know what, I was a part of a gang, because that was never my situation growing up. But it's like, I was affiliated around people that were very well indulged in gangs and gang activities. I remember there was a crew called CYC, Crazy Young Crips, right? Yeah. And this unit was running from Black Creek, James Chipaway, Western Road, Falstaff, and, you know, it was just running down the James Strip. And growing up, I had never, ever been across, like, I'd never passed Chalk Run.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a pretty tight area that you just described there. That's, you know, maybe about a 10-minute walk, right? You're saying as a young man, there was boundaries that you had to abide by. Wow.
Exactly. And all of these things were instilled in us at a very young age, right? We were learning the game and we didn't even know it. You know,
Wow.
the street life, the gang life, you know, it's a game, and you're being taught these rules from when you're young. And it's like, for me, I understood it along the way, right? Some certain things that I didn't understand, but now it's like I look back on it and I understand that now, you know.
Yeah. So you know what, Ray? Like one thing that I wanna kind of just like get into a little bit more was you said that, you know, growing up, you guys all there was a like you're being taught the game without even being taught. You want to say so you just kind of were being groomed in a way by some of the older members of the community.
Yeah.
One thing I'm curious about, just for the parents listening, right? What were there any adults, you know, like besides the older guys in the community who you can go connect with and talk to while you're going through these kind of issues in terms of just being groomed? Like did you understand what you're being set up for, or were you just hanging like with your friends and it was all games a little bit?
It was more so just hanging with my friends. You know, there was like a community center, but I never really got to see staff there like that. Like, I wasn't in a structured program where every day after school, you know, I knew that's where I was going to. It was more so I'm going outside, I'm going to go play some ball, hang out at the ball court, and just chill with my friends. And that was just pretty much it. There was never any structured programming like at Jane Trithaway. You know what I mean? There was like a couple trips here and there. There was like a breakfast club here and there, but like Jane Trithaway is a TCHC, like, you know, it's held by TCHC, and it's like I've never really seen much of a structured program growing up. Right? I can literally count on like my one hand how many events I participated in while growing up. And it was, the first one was we went to see the Blue Jays and some of the Raptors. This is back when Carlos Delgado and Doug Christie and Damian Stoudemire were like a part of the Raptors, and Carlos Delgado was part of like the Blue Jays.
So this is back in the day, you're saying?
Like, this is exactly, like way back in the day, right? That's way back in the day. And then the second thing was just me being going to get some breakfast right before I went to school. And that was that. Nothing more, nothing less than that.
So with that absence of program staff and communities centers like to engage you, try to describe or tell us about the role models that were left there then. Because if there's no program staff or no active community programs to support you, then tell us about the role models who had an impact in the community. Some of the people who kind of played that role and stepped in to support you guys, either positive or negative.
Well, the people that really played that role was I had an older cousin, and he was involved. And you know, every now and then I would just hang out with him. Me and my older brother, we would just hang out with him. And it was not more so like he was just telling me things, but I was a very observant child growing up. So I see something, and it's like that image that I see, it just stays with me. You know what I mean? And I process everything that I see, and it's like, okay, I'm supposed to do this, I'm not supposed to do that. I remember one time I was walking to the ball court. I just seen two dudes who were just hanging out. And I guess there was a little transaction going on, and maybe they were rolling some dice. And behind me, like maybe like a few feet behind me, there was a couple cops on bikes. So I walked by. I didn't say a word to the dudes, but then there was another individual that was walking in front of me. So it's like, you know, we were kind of walking by each other. So this older had seen the cops behind me, and he gave a heads up to two other dudes that I had seen initially, right? So from then on, I'm like, okay, what just played out in my mind? You know, I gotta inform, or I gotta let the people in my community know, like, yo, okay, you guys are doing something you're not supposed to do, clearly, right? Because the cops are behind me, and somebody else yelled out, yo, look out, you know, you gotta skedaddle, you gotta move, you gotta keep it pushing.
Yeah.
So like I knew that from then on, and that's That is loyalty, right? That's something you're being taught. That's loyalty in your community. You know, you got to look out for each other, right? And like some of the role models that I was seeing was like, you know, slanging drugs, right?
Wow.
But it's like they would never ever, and this is one thing that I appreciate most. They would never ever put anything in your hands and tell you, oh, go flip that, go do this, go do that. They wouldn't. Not when you're a kid. You know what I mean? That's one of the things that I really did appreciate. It was always, yo, go to school. How was school today? You know what I mean? And that's what I was appreciated most living in Gin and AAA.
Wow. That's extremely powerful, brother. Thanks for sharing that piece. So, growing up in that community, can you tell us, you know, like I guess your experiences with violence, things that may have taken place, you know, like I guess what are some of your earliest memories of witnessing like acts of violence in your community?
I'd say maybe when I was 14.
Okay.
14. It was summertime, and I wasn't outside, but I was like in my apartment at the time, and, you know, and shots rang out, like a loud kaboom, and then like a couple shots followed right after that, and so I go outside because, you know, every kid wants to be nosy. You know, my parents are not telling me, yo, stay your ass inside or anything like that, you know?
That's fair.
It's like, yo, I'm a kid, so I'm a rebel, so I'm gonna go out and find out what's going on. And, you know, come to find out, you know, a couple dudes got shot across the street. I remember the second act of violence. I was at the ball court. And, you know, fights always break out at the ball court, but this was like a fight like none other.
Okay.
You know, some dudes that did not belong in the neighborhood came through and they tried to what people say regulate some of the kids, and they got it handed to them, right?
Wow.
I'm not gonna get into the details of what I remember, but I just know it wasn't nothing pretty, and I'm just glad I was not a part of that, right? And so seeing those things is like it kind of molds me in the shape and like, oh, you gotta be strong, because you never know, you know, what's gonna take place in your life. Another incident was this was when I was in high school, and actually even before high school, in middle school, I was even in getting myself involved in like a lot of violence myself. Like the first time I ever gotten suspended was when I was in grade 4. And it just followed that pattern, like, of being suspended. It just followed all the way up until I was in high school. Yeah.
Ray, let me jump in and ask you a question. Like, what is that, grade 4? Was that 8 years old? Like, what does an 8-year-old do in grade 4 at that age to warrant a suspension? Just curious to know what the rationale behind this was.
So for me, it's like, because I was still fresh and still new to the country, like I was still getting picked on and bullied a lot, right? And knowing what I had known in my community, it's like, yo, you gotta stand your ground, and you can't let anybody come and punk you or bully, right? And that's what I knew growing up. So it's like I would get people that just like antagonize me and just, you know, picking on me and pushing those buttons that would just like, you know, force me to lash out or act out in ways where it's like it would lead to me getting suspended. And I had beat up a kid, and I felt no remorse about that. You know what I mean? And this, right? And it's like I'm sitting in the principal's office, and then they got to call my house, and I got to explain to my mom and my dad, leaving a voicemail like, you know, this is what I did, right? But here's the thing with me. I was more or less a good kid and a bad kid, but I was like caught right in between, right?
Wow.
I was a peer mediator growing up. All right, so I was like one of those kids. I was like one of those kids that had to wear like the construction vest during recess.
Okay.
Just to patrol around the recess and make sure kids are doing what they're supposed to do and not getting into any fights. I was one of those kids growing up. I was also a student that was given the morning announcements. I received the principal's award. I received tons of awards, but it's like trouble found me, and I handled trouble accordingly, right? I never handled the things that came towards me or the way I was supposed to handle it, right? I was never one to go run to a teacher and say, oh, this person did this to me. It was never like that for me. Right? It was never, ever like that for me. And I'm not going to say I blame the environment that I grew up in, but like it's the environment that I grew up in that kind of like, molded me and shaped me that way, right? Never tell, just handle it accordingly, right? Until this day, like, I would never pick up the phone to go tell. Like, I would just handle it accordingly or, have somebody else deal with it for me.
That's fair. So, like, growing up, you do describe as a child, you were part of programming, at school, and you were recognized, by the administration at the school. But, like, what was the shift?
Hello?
Like, did you feel a shift at some point where things just started to get a lot more heavy? And if so, like, what was that age where you started to cross over into, you want to say, that culture of the community, that gang culture, where that became the norm for you and your peers?
When we got into high school.
Okay, so like what changed? Like, was it just
when we got into high school? So I'd say maybe I was at the age of like 16, 15, 16.
Wow.
Right? And it's like, once we get to high school, you have different communities that are coming together under one building. Right? And it's like the school system is set up in such a way where it's like, you're going to cross paths with like, people from a community that you don't like or that doesn't like your community. And it happened like that. Right? I would see random acts of violence in the school. And it's like, I was seeing people that I grew up with that was getting into fights, that was getting stabbed, right? In high school, I seen people that were getting their lockers cleaned up because there was an X amount of weapons found in their lockers. Like, I was seeing all of that stuff, right? But it's like, for me, having the parents that I had, it's like I knew I had to stick my nose in my books, but at the same time, I had a heavier influence from my friends and people that I grew up with. So like, I was more leaning towards like, like I wasn't a straight A student. I wasn't a B+ student. Like, I was more like a C- D+ student. That's the kind of student I was when I got into high school, right? I had gotten suspended a few times while I was in high school. Like I said, that track record followed me, right? I wasn't one to take no BS from anybody and vice versa, right? You knew how to like pick and choose your battles, right? Man, I've seen the worst of the worst in high school, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
So I'm curious to know about that in terms of like, what's that moment looking back on your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a moment where you just saw it all getting too hectic for you, where it was just too much? And, what was that feeling? I'm talking about that moment where you're actually scared that this can go wrong, right? Was there anything that you experienced, like through seeing through your friends or you personally experiencing when you were involved in the lifestyle?
One that I had experienced was a friend of mine. And I'm not going to mention any names, but this friend of mine, we were all playing football together. I started playing football when I was in grade 11. And this one individual of mine, his started once he got arrested. And from when he got arrested, him and another friend that got arrested together, it just started going downhill for him. And because I was like good friends with him, I kind of started following his trend. But it's like I wasn't heavily in the trouble that he was getting himself into. So what had happened was he had picked on one of the kids from school, and this kid has an older brother, and he's considered an OG in his neighborhood, right? Okay. He's considered as one of the realest in his neighborhood. And I remember we were driving on Western Road with our football coach and like 3 other players with us. So an altercation had happened between my friend and this next youth's big bro. And we were driving to my football coach's place, and we seen the guy that my friend had gotten into the altercation with. And my friend pointed him out. As soon as that happened, my goodness, these dudes came to the car. And my coach felt the need to, resolve the situation I had, but it just escalated things and it made things a little worse, right? That very moment, we was, in a fight.
Hold on a second. So you're telling me that you're driving with your coach in the car and you see somebody who you're beefing with or who your friends are beefing with. And
at that very moment. Hello?
He's approaching the car and essentially he's trying to confront you guys directly in front of your coach?
Exactly. Right?
Wow.
And at that time, he was with his group of friends too, and they were like maybe 8 guys deep. And meanwhile, there's only like 3 or 4 of us. Right? So at that very moment, these guys are jumping in the car. It's like, man, it's actually going down.
Wow. Wow. That is a crazy story, man. That's pretty intense.
Yeah. So from that very moment on, I've been looking over my shoulders, and when I had myself gotten into a fight and I was about to catch my first charge, actually, I was in grade 11. One of the older guys in a higher grade. I think he was in grade 12 at the time, and this guy, like I said, the trouble came to me, and growing up the way I grew up, you handle trouble accordingly. So I remember that time my aunt had passed. No, it was my grandpa that had passed. Sorry. My grandpa passed. And it's like, for me, my focus wasn't even on school or anything like that, And this kid was like, this dude would like come to my classes, knock on the windows and just pointing at me and telling me to come outside so we can like duke it out.
Just antagonizing you a little bit, you're saying?
Yeah, and it was just a pressure. And, he even got a couple of his friends to do the same. I remember I was going to a gym class one time, and this guy had thrown a garbage can at me. I'm like, for real, he did that. So I did it old school style. I never ever fought with a weapon before. I did it old school style. I approached the guy, and I'm like, yo, listen, we're going to set a date. Straight up and down, we're going to set a date. And we set a date for Friday afternoon after school. And at the time that I'm approaching this guy and talking to him, there was like a couple of officers on the school grounds. And I told him straight up and down, I'm going to F you up right in front of the feds. And I didn't care. Right? And I just walked away. So Friday came, I handled my business actually. It was I'm hearing from people, dude went home and he's starting to ball and, they seen him walking home. So it was on the Friday, the weekend passed, so I'm thinking I'm good. Nothing happened. I fought off of school property.
Yeah. Did everything the right way, you're saying.
Exactly. Everything's good. Not until I'm in keyboard class, I'm in piano class Monday morning, and then it's like they're paging me to come to the office. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? From then on, the butterflies just started kicking me in my stomach. I'm like, holy shoot.
Yeah, this is about to go down again, or something's going on.
Exactly. I'm like, what did I do now? And then I get to the office now. I see the guy that I got into the fight with, his face all bruised up, and he's sitting there with his dad. Oh. I'm like, and they're getting me to write down my side of the story. And then from before I knew it, he already wrote down his side of the story. And his father's saying he's going to press charges. And then they called my father, and then we had to come deal with the situation there. And I will never forget that day. And I looked at the guy, and I straight up and down, I disrespected him in front of him and his dad. Because it's like, how you going to start something, and when you can't handle, you're going to come, The reason why, it's not me even boasting or anything. It's like, this is probably one of the biggest fights that I had ever gotten into. I didn't know that I had this much in me. I figured it was because of the anger that I had built, right? It's kind of like you're filling up a bottle and you keep filling it up. Eventually, that thing's going to explode. So him antagonizing me like day after day, me having to deal with the loss of my grandfather, like all that anger just built up in me. So now part of the reason why that they wanted to press charges was because he had a fractured jaw. He had burst an eye vessel, and he had broken ribs. Right? So he had to get surgery done. And the father's looking at me like, yo, you did this to my son. Like, you're going to have to pay for it one way or another. But I'm looking at him like, yo, your son had it coming for him. You know what I mean?
Wow.
In life, everybody has a lane that they're supposed to stay in. And if you're not going to stay in that lane and respect your lane, you're going to get dealt with accordingly. And that's the exact same thing I said to the guy's father. Right?
Wow. That is so. The father had no clue, how much, problems, I guess, or how antagonizing that his son was being to you throughout the school year. Crazy story, man. Crazy story. So at some point, going through a whole lot, you must have decided that enough's enough, or you wanted to do something a little bit different. Can you just maybe talk about the motivation or the reasons why you decided to turn your life around?
So this is when I finished high school. I was getting into college, post-secondary education. I remember in high school, I was told that I would never even make it to college, or would I even graduate from college. And you know what? Those words stayed with me for a very long time. So my first year in college, I got into biotechnology because I figured I wanted to become a pharmaceutical or pharmacist. And I struggled my first year. I struggled hard my first year. And then in my second, so I dropped that course, and then I took another course my second year. And it's like, I'm being told, you know what, you're not going to be able to do anything with this. It's a certificate. You're not going to do anything with it. So, I skipped classes. I had no job, so I needed money. And I started slanging drugs. I started selling drugs at the school. I also started just, building another circle of friends where it's like I was getting myself, into different kinds of situations that would earn me some kind of income. Things that I wasn't even supposed to do, period. So there was an incident that had happened at the school. One of the dudes that I was with, he had gone to an altercation, and he called me to come and help him handle it. So we went there, and he was being short-handed, and things happened from then on. So I'm like, I told my older brother, and he was working at the Boys and Girls Club of Jane and Finch Boys and Girls Club. I'm like, yo, I need a job. Like, I can do the job you're doing. It sounds like you're having so much fun. You're going on all these trips with all these kids. So I landed the job with the Boys and Girls Club, and I was still doing the things that I was doing. So it's like I was kind of living a double life.
Wow.
Trying to be a good guy, but I was still being a bad guy at the same time. And then it hit me, like the kids, and it hit me. I'm like, I'm in Jane and Finch. Growing up, I never crossed past chalk farm. At that moment, it's like, okay, I'm breaking barriers, right? Before that, let me backtrack a little bit. Before that, right when I got out of high school, I worked with a nonprofit organization called African Food Basket.
Okay. Yep.
So now, what this organization did was it brought youth from different communities. I brought youth from Jamestown, Jungle, Scarborough, Jane and Finch. Brought all of us together, and we were working together. There was about like maybe 20 of us. Man, I was like, as I grew in the organization, I'm like, man, we broke a lot of barriers, because here I am talking to dudes that I would never have come across, dudes that were like considered bloods, and I'm here considered like a Crip affiliate. So it was like we're crossing paths, right? We're accomplishing a goal together. You know, we worked in Jamestown. We were working in community gardens. We were setting up gardens for the community and for the families that lived there. Right? We wanted to set up something that was affordable for people that live in the communities, you know, so that they know the food that they're growing and, you know, they're not being poisoned by whatever it is that's out there in the grocery stores.
Yeah.
And this organization has been so phenomenal to me. Like, I think it's this organization that actually turned my life around.
Wow. That's huge, man. That's a real big revelation. So you're saying that like having the chance to be involved in this program that opened up your scope a little bit. You're able to interact with other young men that you normally wouldn't interact with, and having that opportunity gave you a chance to see something different for yourself and for your life.
Yep. And I'm talking, this is almost like 10 years ago now.
Wow.
And so this day, there are still individuals that I started within that program that I still interact with. So that program changed my life.
That's dope.
And then once I got into the Boys and Girls Club, everything else just changed completely. I was working with children, and I'm like, man, I love this. I love that I can give to children and I can see them smile. I can see that I've made somebody's day much better than it was when they started. And these were just little kids I'm talking about. And you learn so much from them, right? I grew up in the boys. I grew up in the Boys and Girls Club, so I worked my way from like a regular staff to becoming a site supervisor. Right? I worked my way up from working with the children to working with the youth. Right? And from then on, like I gave a lot to that Jennifer's community. You know what I mean? And then it's like as years went on, I've been there for like maybe 5-6 years, and as time went on, it's like I started building that bond with some of the youth and some of the families in that community.
Wow. So that's where, like, I want to kind of jump into a little bit. I want to know about, like, looking back on that experience working at the Boys and Girls Club. What were the skills and qualities that you had that you felt like allowed you to make genuine connections with the young people?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't even know the skills that I had.
That's
right?
Fair enough.
Because I was never taught any of these things. So I thought. So it's like I was just keeping everything 100 and like I was being authentic with a lot of these people. So it made me approachable, right? And I was able to connect with these youth, especially the youth, because of some of the things that I had been through in my life prior to me being there, right? Not knowing that this is a whole different side of the world, and they're living the same thing that I was living when I was growing up, right? We're on two different sides of the world right now, the way I see it. And it's like, you come to this community and it's like, yo, they're living and they're going through the same thing that you went through growing up, right? So for me, it's more like, you know, having to really sit them down and show them like the game. And it's like, yo, if you're not built like that, the game is not for you. Find another niche that you're really good at and just build upon that. From then on, it's like I started motivating. I started inspiring. And seeing that some of these youth are looking up to me and even having the time of day to even sit down and talk and listen to what I had to say was inspiring and motivating me to do better.
That's fair. People look at Black youth from priority communities and have a lot of preconceived notions and a lot of prejudgment about the population and the communities. What are, looking back, what are some of the things that you wish people knew about you, even when you were going through those difficult times, when you were unapproachable, when you were a little bit more confrontational, maybe a little bit more edgy? What were some of the things that you wish people knew about you, like deep down inside?
I wish they knew that. I wish they knew that I had greater potential to be to be something that I put my mind to.
Wow.
Right? I wish they knew that, and if they had known that, they would have given me a chance. Right? They would have given me an opportunity that I would not take for granted. Right? Sometimes people say the opportunities are there, but it's really not. It's just a facade. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. I totally get it, because interacting with young people, man, I always see the same thing. I always see the spark. Even when young men are fully immersed in the game, they always have that hope, and that's what the goal is, right? The goal is always trying to see if we can bring that out and support that transition. So that's a really big point you made, and I hope that anybody listening understands that. Listen, man, don't let that hat pull down, like, fool you. Don't let that big bubble jacket fool you. That's a person, a young man in there who wants to be heard, wants to be understood, and wants to be supported. So take that moment, man. So, Ray, thinking about parents raising children in these communities, right?
Yeah.
I'm always so concerned with some of the disconnect between, what the kids are doing in the streets and what the parents think they're doing out there, right? What are some of the things that you would tell parents now who are raising young men in communities? How does a parent, support the young person to help them avoid some of the traps that a lot of our young men fall through?
Number one thing that I would say is be involved in the child's education.
Sure.
And the reason why I say that is because the child is spending most of their time in the school with teachers, right, with friends, and with other classmates, right? And with that being said, it's like, as a parent, you got to be involved. I mean, it's more than just going to like a parent-teacher interview. It's more than just receiving phone calls from the school saying that, oh, your son or your daughter was late, or your son or daughter skipped this class, or we have your son or daughter in the office and, we need you to come and deal with that. No, it's more than that. It's about connecting with each teacher that your child is taking the course of. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have to get involved. If it's going to attend some of these meetings for these parents, get involved, right? Put your children in extracurricular activities so that they're not doing any other extracurricular activities that you're unaware of.
That's real talk right there, my friend. Parents listening, please take that in. Plug them into programs.
And me, I'm about to become a father, and I'm noticing some of the things that never happened to me while I was growing up. And it's like, what if I was placed into this program? What if I was placed into that program? But nonetheless, I do not regret all the things that I've been through in my life. I do not, because it's made me who I am today.
Absolutely. Shaped who you are. That's right.
By God's grace, I'm plugging my baby girl into as many programs as I can. Right? Because it starts from when they're at a very young age, right? They're grasping and holding on to all these lessons in life, all these talents that they can develop and build on as they get older. They're grasping onto so many things, and they become jack of all trades.
Oh.
Right? It's not just about sticking to one thing, and we are capable, and we are more than capable of doing many things in our lives.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Plug them in. Parents, they need to get involved. Right? And if they are involved and they have a child that's a part of a sports team or any clubs that are out there, get involved with the program directors, get involved with the staff, get program updates, get updates from them, just so you know the progression of your child, just so you know what, if this program that I'm sending my child in, it's going to be beneficial to them in the future, maybe 5-10 years from now. Let's stop thinking about the now. Let's start thinking about the future, right? That, to me, is invested in your child.
That's fair. What are some of the biggest, Ray, as you're talking, you get me thinking right now. I'm trying to think, looking back on your life, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned along the way? Just like your journey from that like little kid growing up and being groomed in a way to be part of this gang culture to who you are now on the other side, really trying to support young men. What are the lessons that you've learned that have been most impactful in your journey?
A lesson that I learned today that I didn't know when I was growing up is the fact that is the love that my parents had for me. I never got any and everything that I asked for. I wasn't that guy that was wearing the fly Jordans or the fly hats. I never had all that fly gear stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like, parents, we forget like what's really important. Society shifts. You know what I mean? It's one way for like the next 10 years, and next thing you know, it's shifting. Times are getting harder. We spend all this money on buying all these materialistic things for our children. It's like, if you look at all those expenses, it could have gone to a better investment for our children.
Yep. Or a trip out of the hood to go experience something different too, right?
Exactly.
those kind of investments.
Exactly. Right? We are just boxed up in the hood, and it's like, we don't see outside of the hood. I remember I saw this picture on Facebook. Somebody had posted up, and it said that the world is our home. The world, not the place you're staying, not the home that you're in right now, but the world is our home to explore.
I like that. That's dope.
You know what I mean? As long as you have a passport, and as long as you ain't got no criminal charges, best believe you can fly and go anywhere you please to.
Try to experience something different, man. Change your scope a little bit.
Experience something different, right?
That is
experience something different.
These are powerful messages, brother. This is, this journey that you've been on must have been challenging, but where you are today, I want to say that I'm extremely happy to hear your story and to see that change, because I know how difficult it must have been for you to kind of make that crossover. But now that you're here, I want you to tell us about some of the things that you're working on, some of your initiatives that you've created and supported
right now,
over the years.
I'm focusing on like my family.
Yep.
Another thing that I want to start working on is I want to start developing programs for young men. I was doing placement at the library my first year of school. I took myself back to school, by the way.
Okay. Well, congrats to that, my brother. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Right? Because I can't tell these kids to stay in school. Meanwhile, I'm not in school, and I don't even have like a degree or a diploma to show for it. Right? So it's like I got to practice what I preach. You know what I mean? So I took myself back to school just last year. Humble beginnings, and I'm looking forward to continuing that journey. I always got to learn. So I want to kind of start like developing programs, or just even mini workshops for young men, right? It's like we don't tell them that we love them enough at a young age. So they grow up not knowing what love is from their father, or even sometimes from their mother, or even from their siblings, right?
Wow.
So what I did at my placement was I started like a mini Boys to Men thing. And it's cliche, but it's like it works. It's different. So I based my topics and my conversations around financial support, around education, around employment, around relationships, all kinds of relationships. I based it off of that. So now what I did to engage and to capture the minds of these young people was play music. Play music that they listen to today, play music that they didn't listen to, or play music that they don't even know of. So I did that. And what I did was I challenged them to focus on what's important. Is it the lyrics of the song or the beat of the song, or is it what we are talking about? Right? What's going to benefit you in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe 10 years from this conversation? What benefits are you going to take from this conversation? Are you only going to remember the lyrics that we played or the song that we played? Or are you going to remember the conversation that's going to spark an idea? So it's like, with society, a lot of these young children or a lot of these youth, they're drowned by everything that's going on around them. They lose focus on what's really important.
That's right, man. That's real. So you're saying that the program essentially gives them a chance to explore long-term plans as opposed to thinking within that kind of like immediate short-term frame.
Yeah.
But by exploring all the different topics. Yeah, man, such, you know what, important work that you're doing, man. Again, so grateful to hear you share your story with us. And I'm really looking forward to keeping track of your progress and seeing how you continue to use your story to impact young people across the city.
Definitely.
And across the world and our home, right? That's right. So, Ray, man, it's been a real pleasure to have you with us today. I am, again, thankful that you came on to share with us. And do you have any social media? I mean, like, how can people find you online? Is there any way that they can connect with you? Do you have an email address, or do you have a Facebook or some kind of social media contact that they can connect with?
I do have a social media contact, but I haven't like, it's more so my personal social media outlet.
Get you.
But I do have an email that if people want to connect with me, they can connect with me through email. Please. I mean, I'm on my email 24/7. So my email is Dei, my last name DEI, first name Raymond, the number 7 @gmail.com. So if people want to touch base with me, and for those people that are listening, if you want to start a program together or get me to come by and run a little workshop, I've been running employment workshops while I was working with Pathways to Healthy Life Choices. Just last year, we were going to different schools in the community and just running a lot of resume and just employment workshops. So I still have the knowledge under my belt. I'm more than willing to come up and, reaching out and connecting to those that need that kind of support, because the young people, they need to get their feet wet in the working environment and just, learn the means of surviving and just making a decent income, right? The legal way.
Right? Absolutely.
The legal way, not turn into to transfer some bud to flip or anything like that, but learn the true meaning of hard work, right? Because hard work does pay off.
Oh man, Ray, yeah. Breath of fresh air. Listen, you will find Ray's contact on our website. Ray, again, thank you for coming by. Truly a blessing. Listen, man, let's keep building up, and we wish you continued success as you continue to support young people in our communities, Ray.
Thank you so much, Olu. I really do appreciate you for having me. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. Respect, man. Take care.
All right.